It was the summer of 1944, and deep in the Eastern Front, a wounded Red Army launched a series of operations to strike back at the German Wehrmacht. In a series of 3 weeks, from June 23rd to July 13th, the Red Army launched secret Operation Bag Ration, which aimed to destroy the Army Group Center, which was the name of the two German army groups fighting on the Eastern Front in occupied Belorussia. In the Lvov-Sandomierz offensive, which was an effort to force the German troops from Ukraine and eastern Poland. After brutal fighting lasting more than a month, the Russians retook the Ukrainian city of Lvov and set its sights on Sandomierz, a Nazi-occupied town in South Poland. With the Red Army taking ground and seeming unstoppable, Josef Harp, a German general, needed backup. Soon, under his command, the Red Army had to face death itself in the form of the feared 501st Heavy Tank Battalion, equipped with 20 Tiger IIs and 20 Panzer IV tanks, and the 16th German Tank Division having around 100 tanks, which mostly consisted of Panthers. The Red Army's 6th Tank Corps was tasked with going head-to-head in a cold-blooded carnivorous cage match against them, armed with 29 T-34-76s, 14 T-34-85s, 1 JS-1, and 11 JS-2 tanks. The German tanks totaled up to 140, of which 70 were heavy tanks, while the Russians had only 55 total tanks, 12 being heavy tanks. It was a true underdog story. But of those 12, the 11 JS-2 tanks were armed with a weapon so powerful that it would go down as a legend. The tank would go on to be used until the modern era. How would the JS-2s and the 6th Tank Corps fare? Would they stand up to the dreaded Tiger and Panther tanks? How did the JS-2 compare against these German Goliaths? You'll find out in this week's episode of Epic Battles, where we look at the JS-2 tank. When the German invasion of Russia began with Operation Barbarossa, the Germans were left unsettled with the incredible might of Russian tank technology. Developed in 1939, the KV-1 tank, named after the Soviet Defense Commissioner and politician Kliment Voroshilov, the KV-1 tanks were known for their heavy armor protection. During the first year of the German invasion of the Soviet Union, even a single KV-1 supported by infantry was capable of halting large German formations, and did in such situations as at the crossroads near Raseiniai, Lithuania, where a single KV heavy tank managed to block the advance of elements of the 6th Panzer Division. But as the war progressed and Soviets released the T-34, the KV-1 began to feel dated. While it did have thicker armor than the T-34, it was much slower, and most often criticized for having a 76mm gun, the same caliber as the T-34. Beyond this, what made it completely pointless to keep producing it is that the KV tank cost 295,000 rubles to produce. The T-34, however, in 1942 cost 135,000 rubles to produce. As the KV-1 production facilities began to shift their production to making T-34s, the Red Army made a discovery through the capture of German military technology that shook them to their very core. In January 1943, the Soviets captured a German Tiger I tank. This heavy tank completely blew theirs out of the water and led to the decision to develop a new heavy tank, which was given the codename Object 237. As tank warfare began to accelerate in 1943, designers Joseph Kite and Nikolai Dukov scrambled to create a tank powerful enough to crush the Axis powers. In less than a year, in late 1943, they came up with a stopgap in what became later known as the JS-85 or JS-1. This stopgap was essentially a KV-1S hull with an Object 237 gun, an 85mm D5T strapped to the top of it, to be able to punch the vaunted Tiger I tank right in the teeth from a distance of 1,000 meters. And that was later upgunned again in what became the JS-2. Ultimately, the JS-2 had a length of 32 feet and 6 inches, a width of 10 feet and 2 inches, and a height of 8 feet and 11 inches, and weighed 46 tons. For armor, the JS-2 had a hull front of 100mm at 60 degrees, The hull side armor varied from 90 to 130 millimeters at 9 to 25 degrees. Its main gun was a D-25 122 millimeter gun that was backed up with one Dushka and 3 DT machine guns. Its engine was a 12-cylinder diesel model V2, the same that powered the legendary T-34, and gave it an operational range of 150 miles and a top speed of 23 miles per hour. What about when we look at the cost of each tank? Well, the Tiger I came in at $119,920. The JS2 cost around $47,592. The M26 Pershing came in at $83,273. And the Tiger II, a whopping $300,000. So how did the JS2 fare against other heavy tanks of the day? Well, let's take a look at the JS2 and its D-25 gun. A penetration test determined that by 2,500 meters, it could penetrate 85 millimeters of armor at 60 degrees and 105 millimeters of armor at 90 degrees. The Tiger I had 100 millimeters of frontal armor. At this rate, the JS2's 122 millimeter gun should have penetrated the Tiger's front armor from over 2,500 meters, although some studies say that the Tiger I's frontal armor could not be penetrated from more than 1,500 meters with the JS2's gun. Up against the Tiger II, a thorough penetration study was conducted with ballistics being tested, ranging from 500 meters up to a distance of 3,400 meters. Studies show that some shots penetrated from lower ranges of 500 to 600 meters aimed at the upper front plates, and even 2,500 meters when aimed at the turret front. But what about most of these shots? What happened in these tests is that the armor was dented and severely fractured upon impact. These fractures, while not fatal to the tank, caused slivers of armor to essentially become shrapnel in what's called spalling, that would eventually kill or wound crew members. This might have been caused by the fact that in the summer of 1944, the Germans experienced a shortage of manganese. Magnesium, iron, and manganese ore were the lifeblood of the German armament industry, which used the iron and manganese to produce steel for Hitler's war machine. This caused the Germans to switch to using high-carbon steel alloyed with nickel, which made armor very brittle, especially at the weld seams. This subject itself is a topic we could cover in a future episode of Epic Battles. Let us know what you think. While the D-25 122mm main gun was known for being incredibly powerful, it did have flaws. The size of the 122mm ammunition was huge, so only 28 rounds could be carried inside the tank. When looking at this in comparison with the Tiger II's 86 rounds, that's only a quarter of the same butt-kicking potential. And beyond this, the D-25 used a separate shell and powder charge, resulting in a lower rate of fire, which is a serious disadvantage in tank-to-tank engagements. Also, the traverse speed was doggedly slow. But the JS2 did find its place in battle. Their role was to spearhead the offensives that were launched and break through enemy emplacements. In combination with T-34 tanks, they served effectively, as the smaller, lighter T-34 tanks would exploit the breakthroughs that were created by the JS2. But whatever happened to the 6th Russian Guard Corps? Facing the much larger German 501st Heavy Tank Battalion, stacked up against more tanks. On the early morning of August 13th, 1944, the first 2 Tiger IIs were defeated by the crew of a T-34-85 of Lieutenant Oskin. In subsequent battles, the tank platoon of Senior Lieutenant Klimenklov, who had 2 Russian JS2 tanks, burned 1 more Tiger II tank out and proliferated another one, avoiding any losses on his side. In another combat mission, a JS2 tank of Lieutenant Udalov engaged with 7 Tiger II tanks on the distance of 600 to 700 meters. 2 Tiger IIs were burnt out and 1 knocked out. In the same combat, Guard Lieutenant Belyaklov from the distance of 1,000 meters with 3 shots defeated and burnt another Tiger II. In total, from the period of August 13th to 15th in 1944, the 6th Russian Guard Tank Corps eliminated 10 Tiger II tanks and captured 3 more Tiger II tanks in working conditions. This battle was one of the greatest with supreme significance to the war because it represented the defeat of the Group Army North Ukraine, which was a large forge an important ground force for the Wehrmacht. From this bridgehead that the 6th Russian Guard Tank Corps created, Russian armies would later perform offensive into the frontier of Germany. And that breakthrough force was the power of the JS2. Want more stories from people, weapons, and battles of history? Sign up for battle by hitting the bell and going to war with us every week. And we'll see you next time.